Life is like a river, constantly flowing, changing course, and carrying us to unexpected destinations. Today's episode is about one such journey, a story that spans three continents and reminds us that sometimes the best adventures begin when we step outside our comfort zone. Welcome to Voices from Across the Seas, where we explore the remarkable journeys of people who have made Australia their home. I'm your host, Nelton D'Souza. Our guest today has a fascinating story that begins on America's East Coast, winds through California, takes an unexpected turn through the United Kingdom, and finally leads to Australian shores. He's a father whose family story bridges continents, an outdoor enthusiast who discovered his passion for adventure through love, and a man whose life changed dramatically when he decided to say yes to the unknown. Please welcome Dave on our show. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Nelton, thanks for having me on. And I want to say thanks for your patience. I know we had trouble connecting, but I really appreciate you asking me to be on the show. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation today.
Thank you for coming on the show, Dave. I know a man like you whose time is not completely his own. For you to give us some of it is incredible, and we're very grateful. So thank you. So let's start at the beginning, Dave. Tell us about growing up on the East Coast. What are your earliest memories of life there? And if I may just add, if I'm not mistaken, I think you're born in New York, to be precise.
Yeah, so I was born in New York City, and we lived there until I went to kindergarten. People know what kindergarten is. It's about you're about 5 years old. And then we moved to the West Coast, and I went to first grade in California. But when we were living back east, it's different than California. The just the weather, the main thing. We were near my parents' families, which when we moved out to California, they weren't as accessible then. I think my earliest memory, because I can picture it in my head, I was quite small. I was riding on a bus and sitting on my mom's lap, and I can picture in my head what it looked like, and I was quite small. So I know it was probably my earliest memory. So when we were living back there, my dad was actually he was away in the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, he was, and that'll give you an idea how long ago it was. But anyway, he was away at war. And so my mom was I have a brother who is 1 year older than me, and I have two brothers who are 7 and 8 years younger than me. So there's kind of there's me and Pat, and then there's Chris and Paul, who come 7 years later. So at any rate, when we were back east, it was Pat and I and our mom, and so she was raising us while my dad was away at war. And one of the specific memories I have from being back east was I remember we lived in a little apartment, and there was a grocery store right next door, and my mom had gone to get some groceries, and we didn't really know why, but the reason she went to get the groceries was my dad was coming back from the war. And so we were sitting in the apartment, my brother and I, and gosh, we must have been, I don't know, 4 and 5, or, really little. And he walked in, and I remember looking up, and he's this big guy, and he was in his fatigues, his army outfit. My brother started talking to him, and I looked up at him and I said, "Who are you?" And he said, I'm your dad, because I did not, in the context, I did not recognize him. And it's somewhat a funny story, but it always kills me that the first thing I can remember interacting with my dad was I didn't recognize him, and it was because he was away at war. And so that's, to be honest, it's kind of sad. One of the funniest things was he tipped over the coffee table. We were going to ambush my mom when she walked in the door with the groceries. And so we had little toy guns, as every American kid does. And we had little toy guns. And I remember he gave my 4-year-old brother his M16, and then he took the toy gun. So then I still clearly remember my mom walking in the door, and we were all behind the coffee table ambushing her, and she had the groceries, and she went and she threw the groceries everywhere. And so
Oh,
that's some of my earliest memories. But it was I remember going to school there, and a key part of my really young life is my brother Pat, and he's a year older than me, and so I just clearly everything that we did in life, I remember I was just following Pat where it was where I remember walking with him to school. He knew the direction, he knew where to go, and I was always just following around behind him. And so I need to talk to him and ask him if that bothers him. But
yeah.
but anyway, in he was a great brother. He is a great brother. So
Nice. How cool. How cool is that? It's very lovely to have someone, I believe, in those budding years, to have you to someone you can fall back on and who'll always have your back. I think that's a blessing,
yeah,
the way how I think about it. And the other thing, when you were telling that you all ambushed your mother, I was just a little bit scared. I was holding my breath that with your brother holding an actual gun, he, it wouldn't fire. Luckily, it didn't. Normally, when people talk about guns, I'm like a little bit apprehensive. That they can often, you often misfire them when you really don't intend to.
the things that Americans will do with guns just
Yeah,
boggles my mind now that I'm a little older. Anyway,
yep, yep. And just another thing, when you mentioned uh, that you didn't know when your father walked in through the door, you actually didn't recognize your father. Surprisingly, that just reminds me that that was exactly my first encounter with my father as well, because my father worked in the Merchant Navy, and somewhere around 3 or 5 is when you actually gain consciousness. So I'm sure my father would have been around. He was when I was born, and maybe a few years after that as well. But it's one day, that's what my mother told me. It's one day when he walked in and he was actually sitting on the couch. I was just going about my stuff like as there was nothing, because I didn't know that he was my father. I thought he was just an uncle who had come visiting. So,
uh,
and everyone is like gathered around him and talking, and he's giving gifts. And I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. And then later on, I think slowly when I was introduced to him and I realized that he was staying far more longer than what an uncle would stay for, I realized, okay, he's my father. So that's my memory of him. That's a really lovely childhood memory there. Go to the next question.
yeah. So you were asking what brought the family to California, and so my dad left. He was in the Marines, left the military, and got a job at Unisys, and got transferred to. There's a naval base it's a naval base in the middle of the desert. So
Wow.
so what they do is they test missiles. It's a big naval base, and they test like the Sidewinder missile that was developed in China Lake Naval Weapons Center. And so that's the other funny thing is it's called China Lake, and the famous story is an admiral showed up one day. He was going to take over the running the base, and he showed up and said to one of the Swabbies, "Go put my yacht out on the lake." And the Swabby's like, sir, it's a dry lake. So, it was a lake like 100,000 years ago. It's just this plateau. But anyway, they tested missiles. When I was in high school, I actually had a job for a while working for the parachute division. They did experimental
Cool.
parachutes, and you go out on the airbase and out into the range, and you can see them. It was quite cool. So one of the interesting things about living in China Lake was you live in the city or you live on the base. And
Okay.
my wife lived on the base, and so we never really interacted, but there was only one high school. There's only one high school in town. It's not a very big town. It's like at the time, I think it was maybe 18,000 people, Um,
That's a
uh,
village by Indian standards.
yeah. So, so when you go to high school, everybody is
Yeah.
in the, so that's where you start, and that's where I met my wife, and we started dating and went to the prom together and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So we moved to California when I was in first grade, and it was an interesting trip over, driving across the country, and we drove across country with no air conditioning because the cars didn't have air conditioning back in the day, and only the rich guys had air conditioning, and so it was a great trip. It was a great transition, and again, I remember when we got set up in school, one of the traumas in my childhood was one day Pat was sick, and I knew how to get to school because you just go down the street and you turn, and then there's the school, So I rode my bike and got it there. And then when it was time to leave, I didn't know where to turn coming from the other direction.
Yeah.
So I got totally lost. I just still remember for a short time, I thought I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to find my home. So I was just riding around in kind of certain, and finally I saw something I recognized and I was able to but I had totally missed the turn and gone the wrong direction. But it was good. So the differences I noticed between the East and West Coast, and this is more, obviously climate and weather and all that kind of thing. Southern California is very different than New York, and especially the desert is, small towns different from a big city.
Yep.
And actually on the East Coast, we lived in New York for a while and also in Pennsylvania for a while too, but still in a bigger city. Those are different, but as I grew up and sort of as I lived on the West Coast, there's this West Coast vibe of just being very relaxed and I would take a more relaxed approach to things and more laid back. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback over my life that I'm very, very laid back and very relaxed. And people tell me I'm very California. So that's, I take that as a compliment. Maybe it's not, but I take it that way. So
No, definitely. I think you should tell them it's not me, it's California.
exactly.
Nice.
And in the next question, you were asking about brothers and the relationship with the siblings. I think I'm, and luckily all four of us say so. I have three brothers, four of us. So first, I feel really, really sorry for my mom because she had to raise four boys. It was, it's just like it can't have been pleasant, and we gave her a lot of challenges. But I will say, all four of us brothers say one of the best things about our lives is our brothers. And,
Wow.
I feel extremely blessed. My older brother, Pat, has, he is a crime scene investigator,
Wow.
in Melbourne, not Melbourne, in Minnesota,
Minnesota. Okay.
Minnesota. And he was in Seattle. He was in LA, started in LA, moved to Seattle, and was looking for the Green River Killer. If people who are into true crime, if you know who the Green River Killer is, and then has been in Minnesota. When he was in Seattle, if you watch those true crime TV shows, he's actually on one of those true crime TV shows because he lifted a fingerprint off of a bed sheet using a new technique. And it was the first time that technique had ever been used in a court of law to convict a killer. And so they were able to, the poor girl got killed, and the person that killed him was the person who lived upstairs, and that was able to convict him. And it still runs. I've seen it within the last 6 months. So we'll be watching true crime shows, and every once in a while it'll just come on, and it's amazing. So he's an amazing guy. My other brother Chris is a chef and is an incredible chef and has done does barbecue and ribs and all kinds of. He'll do fancy things as well, but he's an amazing chef. And then my other brother Paul is a teacher, but is also into industrial arts. Have you ever seen some of the shows, Orange County Choppers, where they build the big choppers and things? So they'll cut special rims using a water jet, and they'll cut special designs into metal using a water jet. He worked at the company that supplied water jets to some of those people, so he knew some of the people that are on these TV shows because he was helping them do these special cuts. And he's so they're I think I have some amazing brothers, and I'm very.
You do. You have a galaxy of stars at home.
Yes. And actually, to brag about my mom too. So,
you should.
My mom ran daycare centers for the Navy, all over the world, and so she's come to Australia. She's come to New Zealand and done consulting, and so she was consulting until she was 79. She stopped because COVID happened.
Oh,
so, and she was still consulting. So she's amazing. She got a Presidential Medal of Honor for the work that she's
Really?
done. Yeah, she has. So that's the highest award a civilian can get
Yes.
in the U.S. in the military. So she's a civilian, but in civil service. So it's amazing. She's an amazing person as well, and my dad was incredible too. So I'm very lucky, had great family, and feel very blessed.
Indeed, indeed. That's fabulous, fabulous.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure, Dave, I mean, many of our guests don't know, but you are a star yourself with all the things that you do, the influence that you have, your accomplishments speaks volumes. But more importantly, I think the way you treat everyone higher than you, at the same level as you, and more importantly, below you, speaks volumes. So you're a star yourself. So let me just add that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That was a wonderful, wonderful story. And you also touched upon how you met your wife. You're actually childhood sweethearts, if I may say.
Yeah.
Met in high school, went to prom together. They could actually make a movie on you guys, America's Sweethearts, kind of.
Yeah, it is.
Something like that.
It is sickeningly sweet. So it's a cute story. Lots of cute stories. There's also bad times, but there's mostly cute stories. Everyone has ups and downs.
Everyone has ups and downs. Like they say, as long as the positives outweighs the negatives, I think it's all good. It's all forgiven. Now, you met your wife. I mean, at that time, obviously, you were dating, then you all met, you got married. And, they often say that through marriage, you often have one person's traits coming onto the other. And, there's an exchange of traits. And more so ever after a few years, it's kind of like a role reversal. So have you kind of felt that with your wife? Like, are there some qualities of her that you have imbibed or so?
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and we talk about this a lot. One of the reasons I think that we work together well is we really do look at our life as a partnership, and I think there are things that I'm good at, and there's things that she's good at, and I think one of the things that I talk about a lot at work as well is everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and I think the key is how can you take advantage of someone's strength? How can you cover up for their weaknesses, and then how can you get the most out of somebody and get because to be honest, if you're good at something, you're strong at something, you're going to enjoy it, and I think she and I work together to support each other, and make sure if there's something that maybe she doesn't like doing, she's not good at, I can cover for it. But at the same time, there's also things like one of the things when we started dating, and we lived in California, and there's the Sierras are there, and I'd been to the mountains and all that kind of thing. And so one of these, we were driving around, and she's like, "Oh, we need to go to Yosemite," and I'm like, "Yosemite, yeah. I've heard of Yosemite. I'd never been there before." And she's like, "No, we got to go to Yosemite." And I'm thinking, it's a mountain, trees, rocks.
Yep.
I get it. And then you go to Yosemite, and it's incredible. You stand in Yosemite Valley and you look around and you're just like, oh my God, it's just incredible. And so I think, a lot of that, that sort of opened up to me. She was really into hiking. She started a hiking club when we were in high school.
Hiking club.
Yeah, a hiking club. Yeah, there's
wow. Okay.
Hiking's a big thing, and backpacking, and the whole thing. And so that's how we started doing that. We went up to one of the things that we did was we had been married for a while. And we just had our first child, and so he was not even a year old. And we hiked up to the top of Mount Whitney, and so that was a challenge because she had more experience hiking, and you think, well, it's just walking, right? To be honest, how hard can it be? It's just walking, But Whitney, Mount Whitney is 14 something thousand feet.
14,000 feet.
Yeah, it's the highest peak in the 48 states. There's a mountain in Alaska that's taller, but in the 48 states, it's the highest peak in the U.S.
Wow.
And so you hike up to the top, and it's a grueling, it's a grueling hike. And then when we got to the top, we were So the way it worked was she was carrying Sean on her back in a child backpack, and then I was carrying all of our gear for three people, all the food. And so yes, exactly. So we hiked up to the base camp, and then on the last day, because you have to get passes, you can only be on the mountain for a certain number of days. And so for our pass, we hiked up to base camp, and then on the last day, we go up to the summit, which was about 3 miles up to the summit, and then we go 11 miles all the way out. So it's 14 miles in one day. And when we got up at I think we got up at 4 a.m. because it was still dark. And then we started hiking up because we wanted to get to the summit and then have enough time to get all the way out. And when I got to the summit, it was funny because we're hiking up and I was maybe 50 feet from the summit. You could look up and see the summit, and I was fine. And then you go up. When we reached the top of the summit, I got altitude sickness.
Oh,
yeah. So we're up there, and I'm looking around, and the view was incredible. You could see forever. I mean, it was just amazing, amazing hike. But the whole time, my head, I have a headache. I'm nauseous. Trying not to throw up, and everything's spinning. And so we stayed there for about an hour looking around and doing things and at the summit. And then we walked back down. And as soon as I got 50 feet down, I was fine.
Oh,
it was the weirdest thing. It was the strangest thing. And then, so then we hiked all the way out, and it took us, the entire day, to hike out. So, but it was a great adventure. So it was really, really nice.
nice. A lifelong memory.
Yeah. And then we decided to, so there was a point where, we had moved to, after we first got married, we were still in uni in Fresno, and then we moved to LA, and then we decided we didn't really want to live in LA. So we moved up to Santa Barbara, up the coast.
Yep.
And then there was a Santa Barbara's beautiful. By the way, if anyone has a chance to go, it's just an absolutely gorgeous town. And then there was a point where we had an opportunity. There was a thing at work where I had an opportunity to move to the UK. And so it was one of those things where I knew this opportunity was there.
Okay.
I knew if I asked that I would probably be able to move to the UK. And I also knew the second that I asked my wife,
Okay.
she would go. It wouldn't be a question. We'd be gone because she's much more adventurous than me. I like routine. I like consistency. I think one of the reasons that I do well in crisis projects, which is kind of counterintuitive, I built a reputation coming into dumpster fire projects and being able to get them on track. And I think one of the reasons that I'm good at that is it absolutely drives me crazy. I can't take it. I have to come in and establish some routine and some consistency, and I want to go to each person and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I didn't know what you're doing, and I need to have that structure. But my wife is the opposite. She loves adventure.
Wow.
She loves, going to the new things. And so I had to make the decision in my own mind if I wanted to go to the UK, because I knew the second I asked her, we would go. It wouldn't be a question. We would go. And so one of the things that I used to help me make that decision, and this has helped me through life, I guess, is, we had Sean at the time. We have another daughter, Erin, but she wasn't born yet. So we had Sean. And so I thought to myself, if Sean was in this situation later in his life, what would I want him to do?
Wow.
Because you can say whatever you want to kids. You can give them all the advice. You can tell them they're going to do what you do. They're going to look at you, and they're going to do the same thing you do. And so it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do, And so,
wow, actions speak louder than words.
100%. So I thought, well, what would I want Sean to do if he was in this situation? And I thought I would absolutely want him to go for it. And so So I thought, well, if I want him to do that, I have to be able to do that. And so many times in life, I have come up to a tough decision, and I've thought to myself, what would I want Sean to do if he was in my situation? And for me, that tells me what I should do, because if I want him to do it, I need to be able to do it. So anyway, so then I went, and it was exactly as I thought. I went home and talked to Marlene about going to the UK, and she was like, 100%, let's go. And so the first time I'd ever even been to Europe, I moved there. So I'd never even been to the UK before. I'd never seen it. I'd never been to Europe or anything like that. And we moved there, and so it was quite a shock. So
amazing. Just curious question. So you said you'd never been to the UK, but you made a choice to actually go to the UK. An opportunity came. You felt that if your son was in that position, what you would want him to do? The answer was a resounding yes. So you did it. But before ever going to the UK, did you do any kind of research as to how the UK looks, language they speak, which side they drive on, everything? Did that even freak you out a little bit?
Yeah. So to make it sound quite not so crazy, I had been working for years doing I worked for a software vendor, and we sold software worldwide, and I ran the support team, the global support team. So it sounds crazy, but I had people who I considered friends in the UK and in France. To give you an example, so we after we'd moved there, this guy that I had been working with for years, Jean-Michel, was in Paris, and he came over to London for a training class. And so he was in this training class, and he said to me, "Oh, I heard you're coming to," we were going to take a Eurail trip around. He said, "Oh, I hear you're taking a Eurail trip in a couple of weeks." And I said, "Oh, yeah." And he goes, "Oh, you'll stay at my mom's apartment." And I said, "What?" He said, "My mom's on vacation. You can stay at my mom's apartment," right? So he comes, he picks us up, he takes us to this apartment. We walk into the apartment. He opens the balcony doors, and there's the Eiffel Towers right there.
Whoa!
It was incredible. It was incredible. But so I had never been to Europe, but I had what I considered friends in the UK, in France, in the Netherlands, in Italy, all over. So it wasn't, I had done some research. I was familiar with the area, but the things you don't know, they drive on the opposite side of the road.
For the Americans, yes.
Yeah, from the Americans, yeah, but it is a shock when you have to do it, and I have a funny wrong side of the road in Australia story later too. But there was it was a big shock when we landed. They took us to, I'm sure they took us to what they thought was a cute country hotel to stay in.
Okay.
They picked us up from the airport, and they took us, and then they were going to take us around and help us find a place to live, while we were there. And so it was a big shock because they took us to this little country hotel, and the restaurant only served French food, like really fine dining French food, and we had a 5-year-old kid with us.
Yep.
And so, you want like a Pizza Hut or a McDonald's,
Yep.
and so, and there was nothing around it,
Oh, no.
and so it was beautiful. It was out in the country, and it was beautiful, but it was January. It was freezing cold, and there was just nothing around. And so there's a big, the first, week was very stressful for me because, again, I'm not as adventurous. My wife was loving it, but then they were taking us around to find us places to live, and we went to Windsor, and right where Harry and Meghan got married, if you remember that. And then there's right where the castle is, there's a McDonald's, there's a Pizza Hut. And so Sean was, all of a sudden, he was like, okay, now I have something to eat. And we ended up living in Windsor and made some great friends in Windsor. It was just an awesome place to live. And I think in this, talking about differences in personalities and the way Marlene and I complement each other, because we frequently joke to each other about, one of us will be really negative about something, but But the thing we say is, well, both of us can't be negative at the same time. So one of us has to be happy, and the other one has,
How nice.
And so we'll kind of try to support each other that way. Initially, I was freaking out because it was a big change. It was a huge change. I knew I wanted to do it, but it was really hard for me. Sean was, just a kid, so he was struggling a bit too. But she was loving the challenge and the excitement and the chaos, and she was loving that. But then over, maybe the next 6 months, I settled in, we got a place, I figured out, we had a gym, I figured out things at work, how to get to places, and so I started to feel more comfortable. And then we, just as an example, we broke the antenna on our car. And so she went to get it fixed, and she kept saying, to call people and go, hey, I need to get my antenna on my car fixed. And they go, what? I go, the antenna on my car, the radio antenna? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. And it turns out it's called an aerial in the UK. And so you don't get your antenna fixed, you fit an aerial. Yeah. And so those are just, we went looking one time for Band-Aids, and they were like,
Band-Aids.
What are Band-Aids? What are Band-Aids, And so we're walking around, we're talking to people trying to find Band-Aids, And then Sean, our son, goes, I think they call them plasters. So then we turn to the guy, we go, plasters? He goes, oh yeah, right over here. And it's just, the other hilarious thing is, actually, and you may not understand this if you haven't been to America. In America, cheddar cheese, when you buy cheddar cheese in the store, it's orange.
Okay.
Don't ask me why. Like if you see picture of a cheeseburger in America, it's got orange cheese on it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so it's orange. So Sean was having trouble finding stuff to eat, so we were going to make him a grilled cheese sandwich. So we went to the grocery store, and we're looking for cheddar cheese. We're looking, okay, yep. We're looking for something orange, and you're looking, and so then we couldn't find it, and finally we were like, oh, here it is. This is cheddar cheese, but it's white. Why is it white? And we're standing in the store, and I look at my wife. I go, no, wait. Why is it orange? Why in America is it orange? I don't know why. It should be white. It's made out of milk, right? So just all the little nuancy differences that you see, it's I think I found them interesting after we settled in. Marlene just found them frustrating after a while. So
okay. So it's kind of fascinating, y'all two, the way y'all actually vibe, because it's normally what we know about in relationships is where the wife is not the one that's settled. She likes a little bit more consistency, logic, flow. The man is more the adventurous kind of, and that's the reason the wife always says, can you please calm the farm and just sit in one place and just do nothing? Yeah. But in this case, it's so uncanny because your wife is the one who's more adventurous and you like consistency. And I believe that is what you've picked up from your wife as well, right? You're now the outdoor kind of enthusiast, because that's what you picked up from her. Is there something she has picked up from you?
I think she has I don't want to say become more calmer, but she appreciates the consistency in the home life and all of that kind of thing too. And so I've been, maybe it's just age. We've settled down over time. The other thing too is I always tell people I'm the luckiest guy in the world because when we were in high school, when we got married right out of high school. Like we were 19 when we got married. And I always tell people because I knew I was never going to find someone better than her. And I was amazed that she was willing to marry me. So she's beautiful. And then you're talking about what has she picked up from me? I say I'm the luckiest guy in the world because she rides motorcycles. She watches NFL football, and so she's beautiful, and so I'm just the luckiest guy in the world. I think one of the funniest things talking about motorcycles, and so we were on a motorcycle ride in the US, and we were driving up through Nevada up towards Utah. So we're out in the middle of nowhere, right? And so we stop off and we're getting some gas, and this bus comes in and it's full of Chinese tourists, and they all got their cameras and everything like that. So I come walking out, and I'm getting on my bike, and Marlene comes walking out, and so Marlene, leather jacket, fringe on her jackets, fringe on her chaps, and she's, blonde hair, and she's just beautiful. And her bike has got this custom paint job. So I'm there. Nobody pays attention. Nobody cares. She comes walking out, and these tourists just right around her in a circle. Everyone's taking pictures of her. She's trying to get on her bike to leave, and she's looking at me, and I'm just smiling at her, going, "Hey, I would take a picture of you too." It's amazing. It's lucky. I'm a lucky guy.
You are indeed. That's so cool. That's so cool. I really hope that you all have a lot of such memories together. Like, very, very fascinating. Nice. Okay, so you moved from the US to the UK. You kind of settled in, eventually got over the left versus the right, the imperial and the metric, and the aerial and the antenna with cheese and everything in between. Very, very nice. It kind of also reminds me of one more story, actually. And this is something maybe it's a US Australia story. So in Australia, normally when you go into a McDonald's, you pick up a burger or you get a egg and bacon roll, and they ask you what sauce would you like. And my go-to is tomato. So I say tomato sauce. I was once with my sister and I went to the US. It was my first ever time in the US. I went to McDonald's. I ordered a burger, and so it was pretty dry. So I went back to the counter and I said, "Can you give me some tomato sauce?" And all of them are looking at me. And I'm like, "I need tomato sauce. It's simple. I need tomato sauce." And they are looking at each other. "We don't have tomato sauce. We don't have tomato sauce." And then my sister from the back goes, "He needs ketchup." And they go like, "Oh, ketchup. When did that happen?"
Gosh, it's always been that way.
And it's surprising because in India, we call ketchup. We say ketchup.
Oh, you do? Oh.
In India, it's called ketchup. When I came here, I said ketchup. Nobody understood. Everyone said tomato sauce. And when I go back to the US, I'm like, okay, it would be tomato sauce. No, it's ketchup. So it's, these fine nuances which are there between countries. They all speak, you can largely say they speak the same language. But then these few things that come in between will make you open up a thesaurus, and nobody will even give a thought that, it's called something else, and it can be something else. We are so hardwired to calling one thing, one particular thing in a one particular way that there can be no alternative. It's surprising. And then we realize English is a funny language. It is. Okay, so from the US, you went to the UK. When did Australia happen?
So we were in the UK. We were in the UK only for a couple of years. And then what happened was the company that I had transferred over with. So one of the exciting things, talking about, Dave doesn't like stress. So I was working at a company, and the opportunity came to go work in the UK. So then I moved over with the UK. And then 2 months after I got there, the company that I was working with sold that company to someone else, a completely different entity. So now I'm cut adrift in the UK because I thought I'd just be working for the same company, but I was cut adrift. But it all worked out. There's a ton of great stories about that as well. But then after a couple of years, the company that I was working with in California, another role came up, and then we ended up moving back. And so, so we moved back, and I worked for another, 15 or so years in California. And then same kind of thing happened. I think I was working for a different software vendor, and we had sold we did mobile messaging, and we'd sold some software to Telstra. And so there was a messaging gateway that Telstra had that we ran. At one point, this is right before smartphones came out. At one point, 95% of all the mobile messages that went around the world went through one of our gateways.
Whoa!
It was software.com. The guy, John McFarland, the guy that owned that company, started Sonos. If you know Sonos.
Okay.
And now he's the founder of Sonos. He's an amazing guy. But anyway, so I was working there, and we'd sold some stuff to Telstra, and the part that I owned was this BI. The product that I owned was this BI tool. And so we're having lots of problems with Telstra because it was early days in smartphone technology, and they were trying to do some business intelligence and create. So what they were trying to do is save every single transaction. So at one point, somewhere in Telstra, there was a database that was like 65 terabytes, and it had every transaction that anybody in Australia had ever gone to.
65 terabytes and every
65
single
terabytes,
transaction.
and it was doubling in size every 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was that was back in 2010. And so that was just still early days, I think. And so anyway, we were coming here trying to fix the problem, and um, so there was again another opportunity to but I had already been here several times. And so I thought, oh, hey, this would be good. This would be nice. Australia is a fantastic place. And, kind of across in my mind between California and the UK.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and
That's
so
how you can define it. Yes.
yeah, I thought this would be good. So to fix the Telstra project, they said, hey, why don't you go down for 6 months? We were going to come for 6 months, and we brought our daughter with us, right? And
Nice.
so she was 15, and she said at the time, you're ruining my life. And I kept saying, it's only 6 months. And actually there was a point where I was thinking maybe we should just leave her. And I went and I talked to my son, who had been to the UK, and had learned a lot in the UK. And so I said to him, I said, what do you think? And he said, no, you should absolutely take her. He goes, he's he said, otherwise, what has she experienced in life? He said, I've been all over Europe, and he had, we did the Eurail thing, as you saw incredible stuff in Switzerland, Italy, Venice, Germany, all over. We've been all over Europe with him. And he said, she really hasn't done any of that. And so we brought her here. We stayed for 6 months. The project, people ask me, I'll be on a tough project that's a disaster, and they'll say, "Wow, is this the toughest project you've ever been on?" And I'll say, "It's not even number 3."
Whoa.
Because that Telstra project, finally at the end of the day, because it was growing, and we couldn't, we kept trying to get the guys, hey, cut the data down, and you wouldn't do it. So, 3 other, consultancy agencies came in after us, and they failed as well. So I don't feel so bad. But finally, he said, get out of here. You guys don't know what you're doing. It turns out he didn't. If they hadn't stopped us, I would still be there. I was so emotionally invested in that project. I would have done anything to make it succeed. And so I think what I learned from that is you can't get too invested in. It's just software. It's just data. It's it's not you're not curing cancer. You're not saving babies. It's you got to keep things in perspective. And so that's what I've tried to do in projects, and stay calm. So, but anyway, so we came for 6 months. When we brought Erin here, she was, you're ruining my life. How can I, and I kept saying to her, you might like it, And then we were here 6 months, and she went to school. I think same kind of thing. She's a little like me. She got settled in, and she got to understand how things worked, and then she got a boyfriend.
Okay.
And
that changed everything.
And then the 6 months was up, and I said, okay, guys, time to go back. And my wife and I had talked, and there were some good things that we liked about Australia. So I had already applied at a couple places in Australia to see if we could stay, but it was time to go back. So we were going to go back, and then Erin was crying, "You're ruining my life." And so I had an opportunity that I'd had an interview at IBM and went really well. And so my wife goes, "Well, you go back, and then when you get the job at IBM, you'll come back, and we'll stay. We'll wait here till you get back." I had never realized this, but I didn't realize this till later. My wife had never applied for a job that she didn't get.
Whoa!
In her life, she had never until a few years ago. She finally applied to a job, and she didn't get it. She was devastated, and she told me, and I was like, and I thought back, and I thought, you're actually right. There were jobs she applied for that she didn't take, but she always got she got the offer. And I was like, oh. So she's saying, "Oh, just go back," and I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? It's not a done deal. It's very stressful." And so, but that's what we did. I called I knew our HR guy really well, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, don't cancel our visa because my wife is going to stay here,
Yep.
And he said, "Yeah, no worries." And so I went back for I think about 5 months, and then finally got the offer and came back. And so it all worked out, and so
luckily it worked out.
Yeah. So everything always works out for my wife. So,
Nice.
so that was good. So that's how we ended up here. And then we've stayed, and then, it's been it's been a challenge because, Sean is still in the U.S., our son is still in the U.S. and,
Okay.
he's older and he's on his own now and all that kind of stuff, but I still miss seeing him and doing all that. But we try to make sure we see him every once a year or every other year or something like that. And so we talk to him frequently, but that's the biggest challenge. And so the funny thing is we make time to call Sean and he makes time to talk to us. And we actually talk to him probably more than we talk to our daughter because she's moved out now. And so she's busy with, her life and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yep. And also distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? I mean, you often think a lot more of the people who are farthest away rather than besides you, near you. Like, for example, when I had my friends in the area, I used to meet them. I used to talk to them. But ever since they actually moved to Melbourne, I actually inquired with them a lot more, staying in touch a lot more, because now I know that this is the only bit of airtime that we can get. There's no flexibility that you can anytime drop in, even though the last time you actually dropped in was maybe 6 months back. So you're actually now thinking of every single time that you can actually have a connection. That's nice. That's nice. Before coming to Australia, I mean, I know you, through your travels and through your work, you've been to Australia many a times. But what about your family? Did they have any preconceptions about Australia?
So I will tell you, this is a well-known joke in America. Americans don't know geography at all, and so I can't tell you the number of family members who said, I vaguely knew where Australia was, but they had to go look it up and Aaron had to go look it up on a map on a globe to see exactly where it was, because we just don't, one of the great things about going to the UK and living abroad and all that kind of thing, it's a great thing for an American to do because most Americans don't leave the US and a lot of Americans don't go very far from their home. And so they don't even go out. And so anyway, I think I was talking to my brother. I had already been here 4 or 5 years and we were talking one time. He said, I should know this. He said, you're in Sydney? And I said, yeah, I'm in Sydney. And he goes, and that's on the West Coast? No, it's on the East Coast. Okay. So we have no idea of geography. But unfortunately, the biggest influence we have from Australia is Mad Max, Crocodile Dundee, and In Excess, AC/DC. So one of the funny things when I was
what about Savage Garden? Have you any time heard of Savage Garden?
Savage Garden, I have heard of them.
Then maybe you should tune into them. I have a feeling you like them.
What is the band Cold Chisel?
Not sure. Sorry.
That's an old, but it was a big 80s band, I think.
Air Supply was Australian as well.
Air Supply, Air Supply is big in US.
Yep.
But it was Cold Chisel. Someone was telling me, never heard of them. So they're huge. Nope, never heard of them. So it's funny how like in one country you'll be huge and in the other, and who was this famous the Baywatch guy? Hasselhoff, yeah. He's huge in Germany. He has
really?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's another big running joke in America was, he did Baywatch and then his career kind of died. And so then he had put out a couple albums, right? Music albums.
Yep.
That just as it was a kind of a hobby of his.
Yep.
And so his TV career had died. And so his agent said, "Oh, you're huge in Germany." And he said, "What?" They said, "Oh yeah, they love your stuff." So then he has a huge following in Germany.
Or what? Get out of my dreams.
He's like
to my car or something.
Something, I guess so. Yeah, he's like Elvis in Germany. So yeah, it's just funny, those things. Different countries and cultures. One of the things when I was moving here, I kept telling people, I was gonna come over, and I was talking to the guys that I worked with, and I said, "Oh yeah. Well, when I get there, I want to make sure I fit in, and so I'm going to get like a Crocodile Dundee outfit. Everyone pretty much wears those, right?" And they're all like, "Yeah, Dave. Yeah, show up in that. Yeah." And then one of the other stereotypes I think that Americans have is that everyone lives in the country in Australia, which is and I keep telling people, one of the best. There's a TV show here in Australia called Life on the Edge,
Yep.
which talks about Australia, but it's basically because everyone lives on the edge of Australia.
Yep. On the coast.
There's not as dense. There are very important people who live in the center of Australia, but not as densely populated. And so, and I read somewhere like something like 95% of all the people in Australia live in a big city.
Yep.
And so that's a stereotype that most of us picture, the Crocodile Dundee, the rural, and you'll see other shows, rural
Yep.
Australia. That's what most Americans think of Australia as.
Nice. Do Americans also think that maybe Australians go to work or maybe kids go to school on a kangaroos and that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was the time that kangaroo hopped across the harbor bridge.
Yes. Okay.
We sent that video back, and then there's that one guy that rescued all the kangaroos, that really tall guy, and he has a wombat that follows him around. That he adopted a wombat, and wombats will, you as the mother, if you're, and so they'll follow whoever,
Okay.
yeah, and so there's videos of him walking around, and this wombat just is right on his heels the whole time. And so one of my relatives sent me a thing going, hey, can you give me one of these? Yeah, sure. I'll just put it in my bag when I come back. And they don't realize big grown wombats are huge.
Yeah. Like even I know my sister often said that koalas are so cute. My niece actually said, can you send me a koala? I was like, me being in Australia, I don't have access to a koala. I wonder how I would send it across. Yeah. So, it's the perception is very different from overseas.
Thanks. Well, the other thing too, National Geographic, they'll do, 10 deadliest animals in the world.
Yes.
And 8 of them are in Australia.
8 of them are in Australia, yes. Yeah. Yes, even the spiders are scary, so you need to question everything. You see a spider, can that be venomous? No, it's a house spider. Okay. But who knows? It's Australia, so.
Huntsmen still surprise me.
Yes, huntsmen. So when you had that conception about Australia, I mean, that many of your family members too had that. When you all came to Australia, when you all settled in, did any of that change?
I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, you realize people live in the city. This is really, except when I was really, really little. This is the first time I've lived in a big city like this. Taking a bus to work. I've never done that before. When we landed, the day we landed, because my daughter and I came early because she needed to start school, and my wife was still wrapping up her job, and we needed to get somewhere. And I had never hailed a taxi before in my life. I really didn't know how to hail a taxi. And so I waved one down, and my daughter, being very supportive, said, really, Dad? Really? This is what we have. But it all worked out. So, I mean, I think, there's those things. But I think one of the things that I working in the IT industry, one of the things I say frequently is people say, oh, how do you like Australians? And I say, actually, I don't know that many Australians.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I probably, if I had to count the number of people, I probably know more Indians in Australia than I know Australians.
Well, I wish you didn't say that, but that's actually true. because it's funny, because you walk into, especially if it's the data and analytics, AI and data.
Yes.
You're sitting over there and you go like, okay, where are the Australians? The room is filled. I remember it's like very common, right? If you're at the client side, you're often in a room, you're having a team discussion, and then everyone around you looks same. So all are South Asians, if not South Asians from the Indian subcontinent, it's Southeast Asians from China or other Asians. And then the project manager is the only Australian in the room. And you were like, aren't you feeling a little bit outnumbered?
Actually, I keep saying I'm blessed. I think I like to look at the positive things in life. I've spent so much time in India. I feel pretty comfortable. Even before I was going to India, I was working with Indians, either, with me or remotely, no DCs and things like that. And so I feel really comfortable with them. But like you say, we'll be having a team dinner and we'll be out and I won't realize it, but then all of a sudden I notice there's 20 people at the table and I'm the only white guy. So yeah, so that's working in IT. That is one thing. But talking about Australians and Australians in general, I think, it may sound stereotypical, but I think they like work-life balance. I think like to hit the pub and hit the beach on the weekend, have a good time, and I think that's actually the kind of an endearing quality about them. So it's it's a nice culture. But having said that, there's still a lot of really good, smart, innovative Australians as well. So
Okay. Nice to hear. Nice to hear.
yeah.
What's your least favorite thing about Australia?
Least favorite thing about Australia.
Least favorite. You've told me all your wonderful, most liked favorite things. Now tell me your least favorite thing.
Yeah. So one of the things, and maybe not least favorite things about Australia, but one of the things I miss about the U.S. Is the diversity. Like if you go from L.A. to San Francisco to Chicago to New Orleans, to New York to Boston,
Yep.
the cities are very, very different, and the regions in the U.S. are very, very different. I think one of the things, and that's to some degree true in Australia. Sydney has a different vibe than Melbourne.
Yep.
Melbourne's got a sort of a more of a hip vibe, I think. Sydney's, more, kind of sunshine and beaches. Brisbane has a whole different,
Yep.
Bris Vegas type vibe, and then there's Perth as well. But they're different, but they're a lot the same. And one of the things, like going on motorcycle rides, there's not the diversity of landscape, that you get. In the U.S., one of my favorite rides to, when you're trying to go cross country, you go in through Vegas and you go up to 15, along the Rockies there, up towards Salt Lake City, and there's the mountains on one side and the prairies going out, and there's nothing out there, nothing, and it's just beautiful. It's just really breathtaking. And I've done some rides here in Australia that are similar to, we did a thing to the Grampians, the Great Ocean Road and the Grampians, and then we came across the desert there back to Sydney. And so there was a day we were riding along where you're just riding on a straight road and there's nothing out there, and you're just riding, nothing but heat.
Nothing but heat.
Yeah, nothing but heat. It's good. But so that's one, I guess. The other thing in Australia, in the U.S., when you're on a motorcycle ride, and this may be side of the road, but it may be a cultural thing too. In the U.S., when you're riding and you pass somebody, the accelerator is your right hand, and you can wave to them with your left hand. And so in the U.S., if you pass a motorcycle rider going the other direction, you always wave at them.
Okay.
And so the second you get on a bike and you go out there and ride, you're in a community of people you'll ride into a gas station. They'll come over and talk to you. Where are you going? What are you up to? And they'll wave when you go by. And here in Australia, because it's on the other side of the road, when you ride, the accelerator is your right hand. You can't let go of the accelerator and wave at them. So when I first got here, I kept trying to wave with my other hand, and go over my head and go, hey, but then I realized nobody was waving back. So then I thought, oh, well, okay, forget that. And there just doesn't seem to be as strong a community there. Maybe it's just,
Yeah, I think maybe because the Americans, the biking community in America is very much established. It's been there for a long time. There are a lot of these bikey clubs that are there, the biking clubs. I often feel that in Australia, this is something that's very new. I'm sure there are, but it's not as established. It's not like, very well known. So maybe you could actually start a trend for all you might know. You start waving, and for all you might know, it might become just a cultural thing. So
yes, we'll see what feedback we get from this podcast.
I'll put it out there. I'll help your cause. I'll put it out there as well.
Exactly.
Nice. So you've told me what least favorite thing you liked. You told me that you found the Mount Whitney and your heavens of solitude of the US. You've actually found them in the Grampians in Victoria. So that's very nice. Is there something about Australia that you would have loved to have in the US?
The coffee culture here is different than in the US. I really like, just going down and having a coffee and meeting people in a coffee shop and doing all that kind of thing. And so you do that in the US, but it's just different. You know what I mean? So coffee's better. Another thing I think, and we talked about this in an earlier chat, but I think one of the things that I noticed the difference between Australia and the US is in the US, there's this underlying sense of tension that you don't realize is there.
Okay.
Until I came to Australia and lived here for a while. And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm walking along and I bump into somebody on the sidewalk, because I'm a nice guy, I'll go, hey. No
yeah.
But if you bump into somebody, a lot of times they'll go, hey, watch where you going, man. Or there'll be this, this aggression,
Yep.
And that happened a couple times here where I would bump into somebody and I would feel that, I'd feel that tension. And then I would, turn around and look and the person would be going, oh, hey, sorry, man. Cool. Typical Australian, very calm, cool, it's all relaxed, And so that's when I started to realize that there's this tension in America, maybe that doesn't exist here. So, so it's a good thing about the lucky country, Australia.
Nice. Okay. I never realized that, but that's a good thing to know.
I think if you were visiting US, you wouldn't notice it. I think it's only if you live there.
Maybe.
And I've talked to a couple people. Once I realized it, I've actually talked to a couple of Americans about, and they agree. So it's weird. It's sad to some degree, but
maybe the only one thing that I actually noticed about the US was again when I visited it only once. We were at Times Square, and I've often seen in the movies that everyone at Times Square in New York, they have this what do you call that, a hot dog or a sausage roll. So I found a cart and there was no one at the cart, so I walked up and I said, give me one. And that guy was, in Australia, you have this vibe. There's nobody's there. He's very relaxed. He'll make it, take his own time. He'll give it to you. He'll wait for you to take out your wallet, then to pay and all. This guy seemed to be in a hurry, and I'm like, there's no other customer. Why are you running against time? And I'm like, then it hit me, maybe that phrase, a New York minute is actually true. It's a clock that's always running. Okay, maybe I need to get used to this frequency that people vibe here.
Another thing too is one of the things I absolutely love about Australia that really struck me is there's this mentality of we're all in it together. That and you really saw it when COVID hit, and whatever anyone needed to do, we were all in it together. Everyone just pulled together and got it done. And if you compare that to what happened in the U.S., it was there was drama, and there was arguments, and you can't make me wear a mask because it's not constitutional, and it's just, I think maybe it's because there's the big difference in population, and I think 350 million people in the U.S. you can't control them.
Yep.
And you compare Australia, 25 million people, California is double that. So maybe that's the reason, but for whatever reason, I really love that about Australia, that everyone pulls together and supports each other. you get that feeling. I mean, obviously there's conflicts and things like that, but overall compared to the U.S., it's a big difference. So that's one thing.
So you're saying this, the population of Australia is 25 million, but the state of California alone is about, say, 40 odd.
Yeah,
million.
40 million. 40 million. Yeah.
Wow. So, well, Australia is the lucky country in that case. Right? Okay, so now you've told me about the US, you've told me about Australia. One thing that definitely comes to my mind, which I have to ask, is have you got over the imperial versus metric scale and paying for petrol after filling up?
Yeah, so I will say when I go to the gas station and fill up, one thing is we don't have a car. We just brought our motorcycles over and we just have motorcycles. And so when I go to the pump and fill up my bike, I always when I'm done, I look and I think to myself, is that good? Is that a lot? I bought X number of liters for X number of dollars, and I don't have any idea if that's a good price or a bad price, or and every once in a while. Exactly. Every once in a while, I think, I try to convert liters to gallons and then figure out the bit, but then about halfway through, I stop. So no, I haven't gotten over it. My the app on my phone, the weather app, I have set to Fahrenheit.
Okay.
I've figured out that 27 degrees centigrade is nice. It's nice.
Okay.
40 is freaking hot. And so. And
yes, it is.
And that's about it, So and we have in our kitchen all kinds of, because like we've brought recipes and stuff from the States, and we'll get recipes and it's all in U.S. Measurements, and so we have all kinds of conversions and temperature. We've got things on the inside of the cupboards to tell us how to convert things. So I have to say it's a complete fail on my part, converting to the metric system. Kilometers to miles when I'm riding on my bike is a big mental exercise, because my bike, it has miles, and it has the odometer is in miles, because we brought the bike.
Yep.
Now it has kilometers. It has the speedometer. Kilometers are listed there. They're not as big as the miles, but so when it tells me, I'm constantly trying to convert. If the speed limit's 100 kilometers, I'm converting it to 60 miles an hour, and making sure that I don't go the right. And if I'm trying to track the distance, I'm converting kilometers to miles. So it keeps me active on the bike. That's one thing. So, and then I remember in the U.S., because when I was a kid, I remember there was a point in the U.S. where they were going to make, I think it was in the 70s, they were going to make the conversion to metric. They were going to switch over. And they kept saying the change is coming, They would have signs in schools, and we were going through classes in schools, the difference between metric, and they'd have signs in buildings, and the change is coming. And then one day they just took them all down and stopped. And I don't know why they stopped, but they just decided they were gonna stop and not do it. So I think America's better off for it.
Well, it depends. It depends how you see it. When I visited the US, and I actually Googled this, it's one of the 3 countries in the world that still follows the Fahrenheit scale. It's one of the 5 countries in the world that still follows the imperial scale. So, and I'm sure America can go about with it because it works perfectly fine with them. It's just a challenge that when people from the outside come into, it's like learning a new language. And interesting you brought that up regarding the 70s, what they were trying to do. If my memory serves me right, I believe during the height of the space program, when the US was trying to send these multiple space rockets up in the air, they once tried doing the entire calculation in the metric system. And I believe one scientist got it wrong. He did it still in the old imperial scale. And because of that, I believe they had a major catastrophe with the rocket. It kind of blasted. It led to a large-scale destruction, as a result of which I think that was the tipping point. Everyone said, let's go back to the old way. It works perfectly fine. Would the world have been a different place if the US had followed the metric scale? I'm not sure. it would definitely make my life easier when I visited it over there. And while driving on the highway or the freeway, as in the US they say, I wouldn't have to do the math that maybe you need to do over here, because over there, all I saw the signboards was this place 2/3 miles away, this place 1/3 mile away, quarter mile away, and I'm like, that's surely a lot of math to do while driving. But I think it works. It works well for them. So live and let live. So
There's a richness that we bring to the world by doing
definitely. Okay, so having got over that, what about the petrol thing? Are you okay with paying after or before?
No, I still, every time I go in, because in the US, what happens, you go up, you swipe your card, and then you fill up and you're done. You can get back in the car and drive away and you're done. You're finished. You don't have to go in and talk to the clerk. And here you fill up and I have to walk in and pay inside. And on a motorcycle, you have to take your helmet off because you can't wear your helmet inside the thing, inside the building. And so it's just, to me, a pain in the butt. And it seems to me there's every once in a while you'll see something like I went to my pharmacy. The way prescriptions work in the U.S. is the doctor he'll say, what pharmacy do you use? You'll tell him. They'll call. You'll go there. It's there. If you need a refill, you call ahead. Say, I'm going to come for a refill. The pharmacy calls the doctor, gets the permission for the refill. It's all handled, electronically. And so here, first time I went for a prescription, they said, okay, we're going to keep your prescriptions. We're going to put them in this drawer right here. And I'm like, what? They go, we'll put them in this drawer. You're going to put them in a drawer. And they open this drawer and there's like 1,000 prescriptions in there. And hopefully they filed them correctly. And once they didn't, so they lost my prescription. It was somewhere in there. And I thought, it's like 21st century. It's just, this is not 1843. Come on. But yeah, every once in a while you run across something like that. But the same thing happens. Like sometimes smartphones seem a little smarter over here than they do in the States.
Okay, that's new. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, not so much, but when they were first coming out, because what the carriers were trying to control the phones and things like that.
Yep.
And so they, trying to control the users and make sure they didn't go to other carriers. And so anyway, there's pros and cons anywhere you go, I guess.
Yep. That's true. There are pros and cons everywhere. Just you have to, live with it, adapt to it. More importantly, accept it.
Yeah.
I think you get over it. Now, I'll come back to your family. I remember earlier in this podcast, you mentioned that the one thing that you didn't want is having your family split up across the two countries, which is now the case. So how has your family adapted to life spread across different continents?
It's a challenge. But I think, we've adapted. I think when I first got here, I would call my son a couple times a week, just to talk to him and see how he's doing, check in on him. And now it's kind of, we call him maybe every other week, and we'll have a nice, good long phone call. With my son, it depends on the Sean that answers the phone. There's a Sean that answers the phone, and you ask him a question, he'll say, yeah, no, okay. And then it's a 3-minute conversation. You hang up because he's not going to talk to you. So,
Yep.
So he's distracted or something. And then there's the other Sean, and you get him talking, and he just goes on, and he's a fascinating guy, and terribly interesting guy, and just what I'm biased, but he's a wonderful dude, So Sean, we talk to quite a bit, try to make sure we stay up on what he's doing and how he's going with work and all that kind of stuff. And our daughter's here, and it used to be great because she was here. We'd spend time with her. And one of the interesting things is because, Sean was 9 when we had Aaron, so the running joke was, we had 9 years of Sean without Aaron. And so then we moved here. And so Aaron actually came and told us, now we've been here 9 years. So now we're even. She figured out the date, and so, and at first, she lived with us, and it was great. We could, keep up with her. And then she moved out, and I I have to be honest, we actually probably talk to Sean more than we talk to Erin
Oh,
because she's busy and she's got her boyfriend and she's doing whatever and so we have to chase her down to get her to make time for us. And so but it's I think you adjust and you do the best you can, and that's about all you can do.
yep, agreed. But I must say, but I'm sure Sean is a very lucky guy. He has earned the pride of his father. That's rare in the world.
Oh.
You calling him fantastic, and he's a charming guy. I'm sure he's very, very lucky.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's painful of not being in the U.S. with Sean, and this will sound very cliche, or not, I guess, but maybe 6 months ago he bought a new motorcycle.
Wow. Okay,
So
following in his father's footsteps.
yeah. He's an idiot.
Oh dear.
He lives over on the coast in California, and he got the bike in Sacramento. He's telling us, oh yeah, so he rode his current bike over, which was an older bike, and then he traded it in, and then he rode back, and he's telling us this story, and then we hang up, and Marlene's like, what? I'm like, that would have been great to go with him, so to like go, that would have been an absolute treat to go on a motorcycle ride because we've done motorcycle rides and stuff when we lived there before, to be able to go with him and pick up the
Yep.
bike and come back, and those are the things that you miss by not being, whenever you go live internationally. And people like yourself, and there's so many people in Australia that immigrants and global people, and you miss out on those kinds of moments, and that's painful. So
Yep.
Anyway.
But I hope and I pray that you do get, or all three of y'all do get the opportunity to ride together someplace in California. I mean, it may not be the actual one where picking up a new bike, etc., but I think something close would still be nice. But I do hope and
Yeah. Thanks.
see you've explained, you keep calling your son. How has your daughter adapted to Australia? The reason I ask is because now she has American parents, but she finds a new identity of herself as an Australian. How does that clash happen? Do you all have that cultural differences within the family?
I think she a little bit different. You know what I mean? She likes standing out. She's always kind of been, that kind of kid that wanted to be a little different and stand out. And
Okay.
so I think she's actually adapted. Earlier I mentioned that she didn't want to come here initially, and then when she got a boyfriend, it all changed, and she adjusted. But I think she's made friends and adapted, and I think she's integrated, I think, now into Australia, and um, she constantly tells me, you can't do that here in Australia. You got to do it, some other way, or we'll talk about, what if we moved over to oh no, you can't move there. That's not the right place, or, oh, this is where you want to live, but she's got different views. Like, she lives in Newtown, and
Okay.
Newtown's cool.
Yep.
But it's too busy for me. It would drive
Yep.
me nuts being over there. So, but so I think she's adapted and made the adjustment. I think when she was younger, I think one of the things that she said when she was preteen was, oh, I'm not going to stay here in California. I'm going to move back east. I'm going to go live over here. I'm going to go do these other things, these adventurous things that she wanted to do. She's very focused and stubborn and goal driven and all that kind of thing. So I think she would have accomplished those things. But I think coming to Australia and living in another country, I think that actually helped her become the person she wanted to be. It sort of greased the wheels for her, and so I think she's probably closer to the person she wanted to be because of this experience than if we had just stayed there, And so I know she kicked and screamed when we brought her over here, but I think overall it's been a good thing for her.
Oh, it's nice. Feels like it was meant to be, and you all actually gave her wings. So I think that's just what every parent wants for their child, right?
It's one of the funny things because she works for a marketing company and their uh, their biggest customer is Salesforce.com. I don't know if I mentioned this before,
Okay.
and for anybody who knows Sydney, there's the building that we work in, and there's Salesforce.com built a huge towering edifice that I keep telling her is the ugliest building in the world. It's just 4 times taller than any other building, And
Yep.
so I used to go up to the top floor of our building and send pictures of the harbor, and then and she went up and sent me one and said, "I think I got you beat," because it was
Yep.
from like the 80th floor or something like that. And so she's she's pretty amazing too. Talked a lot about my son, but she's doing some pretty incredible things as well.
Nice, nice. A
Yeah.
proud father. A proud
Yeah,
father
yeah.
indeed. Very nice. So now, where to, Dave? You've already seen 3 countries. You've seen US, you've seen the UK, you've seen Australia. What does the future look like?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think, like I was saying earlier, there's things I love about Australia, or there's things I miss about the U.S. and I love about the U.S. So I think one thing that we're looking to do is maybe split time because we've got, like I said, a kid here and a kid there, and try and figure out a way that we can spend half a year in the U.S. and half a year here, and basically do summers in Australia and summers in the U.S.
Ah, nice.
Who could ask for more than that? That'd be awesome.
Perfect. One perpetual summer.
Yeah. Yes.
Summer. That sounds interesting. Uh, on your list, is it also to explore some more of Australia so you can actually find some Australians? Because you haven't met any.
No, that's a joke. But yeah. So yeah, there's so much of Australia we still haven't seen. That's the thing we were talking about the other day is we've still got to go and do. We haven't been to Uluru yet.
Yep.
And so got to go do that. And um, I was telling like we haven't been to Darwin. I was telling Marlene we should go to Darwin. She's like, "Why? What's in Darwin?" I go, "I don't know. Let's go find out." That's why you go there. Let's go find out.
Wow.
But and Darwin's got World War II history, and so it's got some interesting stuff. So anyway, cool.
Nice. I do feel that you and your wife are more of the people who love adventure, who dig adventure, who love more of history. There are definitely a lot of spots. If I may suggest, definitely Uluru is one. Darwin is Cairns. You can go to Darwin. You can go to Cairns. Snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef with Sundays is nice. Maybe something that you might be really interested would be Coober Pedy. It's an underground city. It's in the mining area. So maybe pick up your bikes, ride all the way to Cooper Pedy, explore, come back. I think those places would be more of your type. So maybe you can see that. So having spent time in the US, the UK, Australia, we have spoken a lot about the differences, etc. Is there any common thread across these cultures that you have seen and noticed?
I think one thing that gives me hope for mankind that I have noticed everywhere you go, India as well, is you look at children and they're all the same, right? They all behave the same. They're running around, laughing, spitting up their food, just making a mess, just complete chaos, and kids are all the same. And you'll see parents interacting with their kids, and they're all the same. For the most part, parents love their kids, want their kids to behave. They get varying degrees of success with that. So you look at that. When I see that, you'll be in India and you'll be in a nice area. You'll be in a rural area of India, and kids are all the same, and which gives me a sense of comfort that we're all the same. We're all tied together. The concern is that by the time you grow up, you're not the same. So that's where maybe we need to work a little bit better on. Not that we have to all be the same. I mean, difference is great. I think one of the things that I love about being able to sort of have this global life where you can go and experience different cultures is just finding out the differences. What's important in one culture is not important in another culture. But basically underlying, we're all the same.
Absolutely. And this reminds me that actually there's a thought that the moment we humans realize that we are just a speck in the mighty universe, our perception of the world and life will change. And we realize that the differences are nothing. They're just nothing. You put them into perspective, they're just nothing. And we just make a big song about them. So we're all the same. Well, Dave, thanks you for that lovely interview. Before we wind up, we have just fun segment which we do on our podcast. And that's a rapid fire round. It's just a very quick 5 questions that I'm going to throw at you. And I'm going to ask you which one you prefer over the other. So if you're ready, let's go for it.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the first thing, food. Which cuisine do you prefer? Do you prefer American burgers or Aussie barbecues?
Sad, but I have to go with American burgers.
American burgers.
Nothing beats a good American burger.
Nothing beats a good American burger. America 1, Australia 0. No.
This is not good. It's not good.
Okay, sport. Would you like NFL or the Aussie rules footy? NFL?
I have to go with NFL, yes.
NFL.
I spend a lot of money so that I can watch all the NFL games, no matter where they're streaming. So yeah, I love NFL.
Okay, I can see where this is going. You can take a man out of the US, but not US out of a man. Okay.
Exactly.
Culture, Thanksgiving in the US or Australia Day celebrations?
There I'll go Australia Day celebrations.
Oh, okay.
We actually, when we moved here in 2011, we landed on Australia Day. So my daughter's first experience of Australia was we went down to Balmoral Beach and it was Australia Day. It was packed. And so Australia Day is a good day. Thanksgiving in the U.S. is awesome, but it's a lot about eating.
Agreed.
So yeah,
turkeys, yes, nice. Okay, so Australia does have some hope, especially on the very contentious and controversial Australia Day topic. Cities. Do you like the bustling streets of New York or the vibrant lanes of Sydney?
Oh, gotta go Sydney.
Sydney.
Yeah. New York is, but it's kind of like you're saying, and New York is nice. Statue of Liberty is breathtaking. But there's, if it wasn't for all the New Yorkers, they're just, there's just this rushed vibe. And Sydney's, the coffee culture, it's very open and relaxing. And I guess, I don't know, I like it.
Okay, that comes to the final tiebreaker. We have to see where this one goes. Nature. Do you like the Grand Canyon's majesty or the Great Barrier Reef's splendor?
I hate to do this, but you have to go with Grand Canyon. If you've ever seen the Grand Canyon, is breathtaking. It's just, you stand there and you think about the thousands of years that it took it's just incredible. It's incredible. So, sorry.
All good.
It was close. It was close.
I mean, this was close, right?
I could have said it was a tie. Yeah.
It's a spectacle. Both are spectacles. I've never been to the Grand Canyon, so maybe on my next visit, I should. Okay, and then I'll know what about this made Dave to choose it over the Great Barrier Reef. So fine, I'll let it go. Okay. So Dave, thank you very much for your time today. As we wrap up today's episode, I'm reminded of a quote by John A. Shedd. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. Your journey, Dave, beautifully exemplifies how stepping out of our comfort zone can lead to extraordinary experiences and personal growth. Dave, is there any final advice you'd like to share with others who might be considering a similar journey to Australia?
I think like I said earlier, I would advise people to go for it. I think meeting different people in different cultures is amazing. Mind expanding for yourself. I do want to take a second, Nelton, and so that everyone else knows as well, let you know how inspiring you have been to me. Since we've known each other, I think you are always out there. You're always reaching out and, trying to, connect and create that bridge. And you really put yourself out there. And I really, really admire that about you. I think that's one of the things I am not as good at as you. And I sincerely have always admired you for doing that. And thank you very much for having me on the show today. And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your patience. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for those words. They mean a lot. Thank you. You have been an inspiration for me as well. So I think it goes both ways. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so once again, Dave, thank you for sharing your inspiring journey with us. To our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Voices from Across the Seas on your favorite podcast platform. You can find the podcast notes on our Substack. Your support helps us to bring more amazing stories like Dave to listeners worldwide. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember, every journey begins with a single step. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for your time. I had to skip over a few questions because I was conscious that we had book time only till 2:30, and I did not want to go over. I know you have a very packed calendar, and many people in IG and across EY need you more than me. So,
cool.
so thank you for sharing your story. I'll have this as quickly as I can, and I'll publish it. And once I do, I'll let you know.
Yeah, give me the link because I want to send it to my mom. So.
Oh, nice. I hope she's doing well. I hope the surgery was a success.
Yeah. It's really good. She's doing quite well. Yeah. So
nice. Good. That's good. Pass on my best wishes to her for a speedy recovery. Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.